This is Dolynny TV, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, and welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here on the channel today. And let me tell you, if you haven't already, go on over. I think it's always good to go support the Oilers Nation articles when they come out with some stuff. And of course, if you don't know why this article is coming out, it's because Brian Burke let it be known that he thinks the Edmonton Oilers are the second closest Canadian team to winning a Stanley Cup. That being the Oilers being Canada's second best shot in the coming years to get back to a Canadian Stanley Cup champion. So, number one on the list is Brian Burke's Toronto former team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Honestly, you could almost go through half that list and say Brian Burke's former team, so whatever of it. But I just want to sit here and kind of discuss, because this is one that's going to spark a lot of debate if you're actually paying attention at all to the Edmonton Oilers and kind of the needs and the wants and everything in between, is the fact of just how close are the Oilers to winning the Stanley Cup. And honestly, if you would have asked me in any time prior to the end of the Chicago series, we were that close. We were that close because, simply put, all it took is one guy stepping up, the defense being competent, the goaltending was fine, other than starting Mike Smith game one, and realistically, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins doing their thing, we would have been gold. Problem is, what cost the Oilers in that series against Chicago? It's not that they got beat by Chicago. The Oilers did not, at the least, get beat by Chicago. That's the terrible part here, is the Oilers lost to themselves in the Stanley Cup play-ins. That's end of day what ended up happening there. So that's a tough pill to swallow, right? Obviously, if you're an Oilers fan, you'd say, oh, no, Chicago beat us. But Chicago didn't beat us. We beat ourselves. And then you have every other fan base in the NHL dunking on us for Chicago beating us, when in fact, nobody paid attention outside of Oilers fans to what happened. And ladies and gentlemen, the Oilers defense, namely a couple of guys, pooped themselves and totally forgot how to play defensive hockey in the playoffs, and good night, it was over. And well, that was our spring hockey, summer hockey, COVID hockey, whatever the heck it was. But honestly, go back, roll this back to pre-COVID times. Let's roll it back to about March 1st, all right? March 1st, March 11th, wherever you want to roll it back to, whatever you consider pre-COVID times. And you kind of look at the Oilers back then, is the fact they were one or two pieces away from being absolutely lights out in the playoffs. And honestly, lights out in the playoffs, what does that take? Well, I think, again, that's your third line centerman, and that's your number one D-man, somebody back there who leads the way every single night no matter what. And, well, you see how that kind of shook out in the play-in, but go back to it, right? Third line centerman, we have a very good third line centerman. Problem is, he's a 3B at best. He's not a 3A, he's not a solid 3, he's solid 3B, Riley Sheahan. Perfect on the penalty kill, can win a face-off at timely times, and can provide a little bit of offense. Problem is, you need a lot more offense and a lot more offensive zone time out of your third line. You need that grind game that they don't exactly bring. I think early in the year, Jujhar Khaira, Sheahan, and Archibald, when they got in the offensive zone, they were very solid. They were very, well, workmanlike. They went along the boards and crushed guys down for a solid 20 to 25 seconds a shift. Problem is, then they'd come out the next shift and get hammered in their own zone. So, again, you need that guy who can make that move. And honestly, here's the thing, is I think it's an outdated idea that Nugent-Hopkins is a centerman on this team. You now have a $6 million a year winger in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins who can play first or second line minutes. I don't care what you think of him in the play-in. I don't care what you think of him in the last stretch of it, whatever. Because the thing with Nugent-Hopkins is the guy makes players better and gets better playing with good players. And that, when you're talking about a top six winger, is exactly what you want. And why would you stick up the middle 12.5, 8.5, 6 million on your first three lines? That just does not make sense when you could easily find that guy in the third line center role. So when it comes down to it, yes, how far away are the Oilers from winning a cup? Again, it's that age-old question, and I already hear the comments saying Ryan Strome. But you know what? End of day, if you can find that third line centerman, the Oilers stand 10 times better shot than they did in this season, and that's not going into the play-in. I don't care about the play-in. That is not a playoff problem for the Oilers. That was a crap yourself, forget what you're doing moment for the Oilers defensively. And well, you know what? Again, look at pre-COVID times and look at where we were on pace to be by April 6th or 4th or whenever this season was actually supposed to end, and then going into the playoffs. But sometimes life doesn't work the way you planned it, right? That's the thing. So I think number one when it comes to how close the Oilers are to that Stanley Cup is that third line scoring centerman, but also brings exactly what Riley Sheahan brings to the table. Kills penalties at an elite level. You can talk about Nugent Hopkins killing penalties, but I'm sorry, if you have Nugent Hopkins killing penalties, therefore you don't have another guy killing penalties, so you need that guy in there on the one unit, and that would be a guy who's just a bit better than Riley Sheahan. Who that guy is, beyond me, because end of the day, until you find him, I don't know who he is. Straight up. You can name names. We've done that for years. We've tried to plug and play who the right guy is. Never has it happened, so we need to find that. And then second to that, the number one D-man situation. Here's the thing. You can get away with winning a Stanley Cup if all 6 guys buy in and play defense. Unfortunately, 3, half, 4, whatever you want to look at, all forgot how to play defense in that play-in against Chicago. Nobody was covering man in front of the net. Nobody was pushing the man out of the net. Nobody was doing anything in terms of actual defensive structure that Dave Tippett had preached all season long, right? Yes, the tips killed us, but that's not because Chicago is the world's best team at tipping a puck. I'm sorry, have you ever watched the Oilers play against the San Jose Sharks? You would know the Sharks are in fact the best team at tipping pucks. However, no, that's not a problem that Chicago presents. It's a problem that the Oilers created themselves with not buying into the defensive structure. And again, where do you find that? You find that in your overpaying defenders to play subpar defense. Adam Larson played subpar defense in the play-in. You know what? Talk about him being serviceable, a legit shutdown defender, all that. Problem is, if you don't show up when it matters most, knock us all the way from 2 to 7 on Brian Burke's list, because end of the day, if you aren't defending, you aren't going to win a Stanley Cup, and that's just as simple as it is. You look at some of the teams that didn't defend in the playoffs. I think, what was it? I believe that was the statement out of Colorado's kind of assessment of them losing in the second round against Dallas, I think. That seems like 3 weeks ago already, but you get where I'm going, is that straight up, you can't outscore your problems in the playoffs. Not for 4 rounds to win a Stanley Cup. You might do it for round 1, 2, and half of 3. At some point it comes back to bite you, and if you don't have that defensive buy-in, you've got a problem. And honestly, ask yourself on this Oilers defense, do we have that one guy that makes everybody else go say, wow, okay, that guy plays defense the right way. We all have to do that and we'll win. I honestly don't think the Oilers have a guy that can do that. Now, here's the funny part, is we're 8 minutes and change into this video, and you're asking, Tyson, didn't you say the Oilers were going to win the Stanley Cup? Yes, I did. And straight up, again, I've already explained myself there, but here's the thing. If you want to secure it, either go do those 2 things, and my goodness, talk about the Oilers' fortunes changing, because that's really it. There's 2 simple pieces. The goaltending is fine enough. Yes, we have to find a backup, but who doesn't? Half the league every season has to find a backup. So that's nothing new for anybody involved in the NHL, is the age-old question of who's going to back up your number 1. And I'm not saying you can't improve on Mikko Koskinen. You absolutely can improve. You can always improve. There's always improvements to be made. But the end of day fact, when it comes down to it, is simple. You know what? Mikko Koskinen is good enough if the team in front of him is good enough. The age-old adage is the goalie's only as good as the team in front of him. So, you see what the Oilers defense did in the playoffs, pooping themselves and forgetting how to play hockey. Well, pretty simple. Pretty simple. Mikko Koskinen's not going to look the best because the team forgot how to play defense. Well, Now you erase that, and you've got a goaltender who had a .917 save percentage in the regular season. As long as he's getting enough rest in between games, guys, bingo, there you go. That is why the Edmonton Oilers are Canada's second best chance to bring home the Stanley Cup within the next how many ever few short years, because simply put, we are not that far away. We really aren't. You look at the problems caused in the play-in, you look at the holes on the roster, they are really, really simple to fix if you can plug and play the right guy in the right situation. And like I said, you don't necessarily have to find that number one defender on the back end if everybody buys in to what Dave Tippett preaches for a defensive system. So that third line center, that's a big key in terms of needs to check every box, and we've been close with a couple of things, right? Nuge checks a couple of boxes, but then all of a sudden if you have Nuge there, you're missing another box. Yeah, and then Riley Sheahan checks 3/4 of the boxes, blah, 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 blah. But you just need that guy that checks all the boxes, and ladies and gentlemen, bing, bang, boom, you might want to move the Edmonton Oilers because they got Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid to number one over the Maple Leafs when it comes down to it. But guys, that's where I'm going to end it. I'm going to let the debate go, and I'm probably not going to respond to a single comment because, my goodness, it is going to be a war in the section below this video. I'm Tyson. This is Dolynny TV. I will catch you in the next one.